World War II officially ended on September 2, 1945, when Japan signed the surrender documents aboard the USS Missouri. Celebrations erupted worldwide, soldiers returned home, nations began to rebuild. But on a remote island in the Philippines, Second Lieutenant Hiroo Onoda didn't get the memo. Or rather, he got it and he refused to believe it. December 1944. Onoda was 22 years old when he received orders that would define the next 3 decades of his life. He was trained in guerrilla warfare, specifically in intelligence gathering and sabotage. His commanding officer, Major Taniguchi, gave him explicit instructions. Conduct guerrilla warfare on Lubang Island and do whatever you can to hamper enemy attacks. Then came the order that would haunt him. It may take 3 years, it may take 5, but whatever happens, we'll come back for you. There was one more critical instruction. Under no circumstances was he allowed to surrender or take his own life. This was drilled into him with absolute authority. Onoda arrived on Lubang Island with a handful of soldiers, ready to resist the American invasion to the very end. The war ends, but not for Onoda. When the war ended in 1945, Onoda and his group were hiding in the mountains. They saw leaflets dropped from planes announcing Japan's surrender. They heard loudspeakers blaring the news. They found newspapers left at various locations. But Onoda was convinced it was all American propaganda, designed to trick them into surrendering. Think about this from his perspective. He'd been trained to expect deception. He'd been ordered never to surrender. He'd been promised that Japan would return for him. Every fiber of his training told him to be suspicious, to hold the line, to wait for his country to retrieve him. So that's exactly what he did. One by one, his companions fell away. Some surrendered, unable to continue the fight. Others died in skirmishes with local police and Filipino civilians. By 1972, Onoda was alone. Just him, the jungle, and an unshakable sense of duty. For 29 years, Onoda survived by stealing rice and bananas from local farms, shooting cattle for food, and evading search parties. He conducted guerrilla operations, burning rice stores and engaging in firefights with Filipino police. To him, these weren't crimes. They were acts of war. He was still a soldier following orders. The Japanese government sent search parties. His family recorded messages begging him to come home. Former comrades traveled to the island to coax him out. Nothing worked. Onoda examined every piece of evidence and found reasons to doubt its authenticity. The handwriting looked off. The photographs seemed staged. His paranoia, forged by years of isolation and combat training, made him impervious to reason. Enter Norio Suzuki, a 24-year-old Japanese dropout and adventurer. In 1974, Suzuki told friends he was going to find 3 things: the Loch Ness Monster, an abominable snowman, and Lieutenant Onoda. People laughed. He actually found Onoda. Suzuki traveled to Lubang Island with little more than a camera and audacious confidence. He wandered the jungle calling out Onoda's name. Incredibly, Onoda approached him. They talked. Onoda explained that he was still following orders and would only surrender if his commanding officer relieved him of duty. Suzuki returned to Japan and tracked down Major Taniguchi, who was now working as a bookseller. Taniguchi agreed to travel to the Philippines. On March 9, 1974, Major Taniguchi, now an old man in civilian clothes, stood before Onoda in the Philippine jungle. With tears streaming down both their faces, Taniguchi read the orders. "You are hereby relieved of all military duties. The war has ended. You may now return to Japan." Onoda, still in his tattered uniform, ceremonially surrendered his sword. his rifle still in working condition, 500 rounds of ammunition, and several hand grenades. He stood at attention, saluted, and after 29 years, his war finally ended. When Onoda returned to Japan, he was stunned by what he found. The country he'd been fighting for no longer existed. Japan had transformed from a militaristic empire into a peaceful, prosperous democracy. The values he'd sacrificed everything to defend had been replaced by pacifism and economic growth. Onoda struggled to adjust. He became a minor celebrity, but the modern world felt alien to him. Eventually, he moved to Brazil, where he raised cattle and found peace in a simpler life. He later returned to Japan and established a nature school for young people, hoping to teach them survival skills and self-reliance. Onoda died in 2014 at the age of 91. To the very end, he maintained that he'd simply been doing his duty. He never apologized for the Filipino civilians he'd killed during his decades-long campaign. In his mind, he'd been a soldier at war, nothing more, nothing less. Hiroo Onoda's story is a haunting reminder of the power of indoctrination, loyalty, and the human capacity to cling to purpose even when the world has moved on. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't stupid. He was a man shaped by his training, his culture, and his sense of duty into something unbreakable. For better or worse, he became the ultimate soldier, one who quite literally didn't know how to stop fighting. The question his story leaves us with isn't whether he was right or wrong. It's about what we're willing to sacrifice for the things we believe in, and whether there comes a point when loyalty becomes its own kind of prison. Onoda spent 29 years in the jungle. But you have to wonder, even after he left, did he ever really escape?